embark on a journey back to the sands and secrets of ancient Egypt. Beyond the pyramids and pharaohs lies a world of hidden wonders and untold stories. Today, we uncover 7 things you didn't know about ancient Egypt, revealing the marvels and mysteries of a civilization that continues to fascinate the world. Prepare to be amazed. Let's uncover the hidden mysteries of ancient Egypt. They did not ride camels. The camel was not used regularly in Egypt until the very end of the dynastic age. Instead, the Egyptians used donkeys as beasts of burden and boats as a highly convenient means of transport. They weren't camel riders. Not until the very end of the dynasty period was the camel employed on a regular basis in Egypt. Rather, the Egyptians employed boats as a very practical mode of transportation and donkeys as creatures of burden. Their bountiful country was centered on the river Nile, which formed a natural thoroughfare for those who wanted to sail in the other direction. The wind made life easier, while the current assisted those who had to row from south to north. Canals connected the river to towns, quarries, and construction sites. Grain and large stone blocks were transported by enormous wooden barges, while people were transported about on light papyrus boats for daily use. And every day, high above the river, the sun god Ra was believed to sail across the sky in his solar boat. Not every individual was mummified. The mummy, a dried, wrapped, and disemboweled corpse, has come to symbolize Egypt. However, mummification was a costly and drawn-out procedure that was only used by the more affluent sections of society. The great bulk of Egypt's deceased were interred in unadorned desert pits. Why, then, did the wealthy believe that their deceased needed to be mummified? They thought that reincarnation was feasible, but only if the body kept its distinguishable human form. Paradoxically, this might have been accomplished with relative ease if the deceased had been buried in direct contact with the scorching, sterile desert sand, which would have caused a natural desiccation. But the elite wanted to be buried in coffins within tombs, and this meant that their corpses, no longer in direct contact with the sand, started to rot. The twin requirements of elaborate burial equipment plus a recognizable body led to the science of artificial mummification. The living and the dead enjoyed a meal together. The mummified body and the co-spirit that resided next to it were intended to have an eternal abode in the tomb. A secret burial chamber shielded the mummy from harm, and an accessible tomb chapel let families, well-wishers, and priests to visit the deceased and leave the regular gifts that the core needed. There was always food and drink available within the tomb chapel. The living then devoured them bodily after the car had consumed them spiritually. Many families slept in their ancestors' tomb chapels at the yearly Feast of the Valley, a celebration of death and rebirth. The hours of darkness were spent drinking and feasting by torchlight as the living celebrated their reunion with the dead. Food offerings to the dead, from a decorative detail from the sarcophagus of Irina Menpu. Egyptian women had equal rights with men. In Egypt, legal equality applied to men and women of comparable social standing. Women may now acquire, earn, purchase, sell, and inherit property. They could raise their own children if they were widowed or divorced and live without the protection of male guardians. They could file lawsuits with the courts and face consequences. Additionally, they were supposed to handle business in lieu of an absent husband. In ancient Egypt, marriage was expected of all people, and spouses were assigned complementary but opposing duties in the union. As the mistress of the house, the wife was in charge of all household affairs on the inside. She managed the home and raised the kids while her husband, the more powerful partner in the marriage, played the external, wage-earning role. Egyptian men were not very likely to marry their sisters. A few monarchs in Egypt wed their sisters or half-sisters. Due to these incestuous unions, the queen was bred to be obedient to her husband and their offspring, and was taught her duties from an early age. They limited the pool of possible heirs while matching suitable husbands for princesses who may otherwise go unmarried. They even served as a conduit to the gods, some of whom indulged in incestuous relationships. Nonetheless, brother-sister unions were never required, and Nefertiti, one of Egypt's most well-known queens, was not descended from royalty. The Great Pyramid was not built by slaves. According to the ancient historian Herodotus, 100,000 slaves labored to build the Great Pyramid. His depiction of adults, children, and laboring people in the most grueling circumstances has become incredibly popular among contemporary filmmakers. That is incorrect, though. The Great Pyramid was actually constructed by a labor force of up to 20,000 temporary laborers, in addition to 5,000 permanent, salaried personnel. According to archaeological findings, these laborers were free males who were called upon to perform a 3- or 4-month shift on the construction site before going back home under the corvée system of national service. They were paid in food, drink, medical care, and for those who passed away while performing their duties, a burial at a makeshift camp close to the pyramid. Cleopatra may not have been beautiful. Two of the most influential men in Rome, Mark Antony and Julius Caesar, were won over to Cleopatra VII, the final queen of ancient Egypt. She had to be exceptionally beautiful, right? This was probably not the case based on her coins. Her deep-set eyes, broad chin, and prominent nose are all visible when she is viewed in profile. Naturally, the craftsmanship of Cleopatra's coins is evident, and it's conceivable that the queen deliberately avoided seeming overly feminine on the tokens that symbolized her authority both inside and outside of Egypt. Sadly, there isn't a first-hand account of the queen. The historical historian Plutarch, who never had the pleasure of meeting Cleopatra, claims that her attractiveness was derived from both her lovely voice and mannerisms.